inSTEM is a holistic mentorship and skills development program. We invite you to bring your whole selves into this virtual learning space. So before I turn it over to the experts, let's pause for a moment of mindfulness.
Hi, I'm Jung Choi. I'm Chief Business and Strategy Officer for Global Blood Therapeutics. We are a biotechnology company, so that is, we're in the business of discovering and developing and then delivering new therapies for people living with sickle cell disease and other underserved communities. So what I do there is I'm responsible for company strategy, business development, patient advocacy, and government affairs, and I also lead a project team for one of our sickle cell disease programs in development. So functionally, my area of expertise is really in the company strategy development as well as business development, or known as BD. The biz dev side of the business is really about executing our strategy. So how do we find partners with innovative product solutions or new technologies, and then negotiating to get the rights to them? So it could be a company acquisition, it could be a license agreement for a product. So in essence, that part of my job, I am a professional negotiator. My teams and I basically over the years have completed over 50 transactions, maybe about $13 billion in upfront dollars in terms of negotiations. I think of negotiations as really the back and forth process of trying to reach an agreement with someone who has something you want. Usually you have some information about what you might agree on and also what you might disagree on. And there's also probably some lack of information about where the other side is on certain issues. So the negotiation is really the process of communicating to see if you can reach a deal. I'd also say that some people think of negotiations as winner take all. It's either you win or you lose. And in reality, it's usually about problem solving to see if you can reach a conclusion or an agreement. Because in real life, many negotiations, probably most negotiations, are not one-offs. So you're probably going to run into the other party in the future somewhere, or at a minimum, you're thinking about your reputation. Because everyone's got a camera, they can tweet or Yelp about you, right? So realistically, it's in your best interest to consider a negotiation a joint problem-solving effort rather than, a chance to kind of get everything you can out of somebody. Probably the first deal I ever negotiated was with my mother. If I get all my homework done, then I can stay up late and watch my favorite show, which was MacGyver at the time. And if I do the dishes or take out the garbage, then I get more time, right? I get to watch maybe Fantasy Island or something. So the thought is you learn quickly how to get to a win-win, right? Knowing what mattered to my mother helped me get what I wanted out of it. And I'd say growing up, we traveled around to different places where there's a lot of markets, right, where there isn't a set price. So if you go to the developing world, Vietnam, Morocco, Chile, there are lots of markets where you can actually have fun, having conversations with locals to try to haggle on the price. And then formally, when I was at business school at Stanford, I took a class on negotiations where I learned the theory of it. And then we also had a lot of assignments to try to explain, get some practice at it. I learned the concept of a BATNA, which is best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And this means that before you get into a negotiation, you know your backup plan. What is my best alternative if I don't get to a deal now? So then the goal of a negotiation is to be better off than your BATNA, right? Your best alternative. It sounds pretty simple. Except when you're in the heat of a negotiation, sometimes emotions can kind of take you away from the deal, and you might end up signing something or doing something that's actually worse than your best alternative. Or you may really just want to win the argument and you don't like what maybe the other side was saying. And then you may actually walk away from a deal that's actually better than your alternative because you just didn't like how it was going. So it's really important to get to know your BATNA before the negotiations really begin. One of the exercises in this negotiation class was to just go to your local mall and pick a vulnerable sales rep and negotiate for something that they normally would not give you. So, if you go up to the jewelry counter, everything's got a price tag. But maybe you could sort of say, I really wanted this, but it's far too expensive. Can you give me a discount? And the objection, of course, is going to be, well, we don't give discounts. This is a department store, ma'am, right? Okay, well, but when do you think that it might go on sale? Or if I buy it now, can you also give me another thing that maybe you have some freebies, maybe I can get some makeup. So, the idea is to be comfortable asking for more and to not just accept that this is a situation where the price is set, either you buy it or you don't. Oftentimes there's lots of creativity, and if you start having the conversation, you may actually get something out of it. But the more important thing is to practice flexing that muscle of negotiating and trying different creative routes to try to get something out of it. So you can try with that. Also, as I said, I think negotiations happen with relationships in your life. So, maybe your roommate, does some annoying thing, maybe she leaves her clothes out, in the common areas, and that really annoys you. So that's a good opportunity for a conversation, whether you call it a negotiation or not. What you want is a different kind of outcome, and you're trying to find a way to have the conversation in a way that gets you what you want, but also meets her needs in some way. So that's a good practice situation as well. And you can probably, if you start to think about negotiations as problem solving, you'll probably find lots of examples in your life. So I've been thinking about what is it that I would want to know if I were in, your shoes or someone else's shoes. So if you're thinking about negotiation, the first thing is preparation. As I said before, understand your position, understand the other party's position. Who are they? What do they care about? The research is actually most of this, so you really do your homework before. Second, we talked about BATNA, knowing your BATNA in the clear light of day, so that you don't go into a negotiation not knowing where you want to come out. As I said in the beginning of a negotiation, it's kind of important to start with some common goals. We both agree on this. So if you can start to build a foundation of agreements, that's a good place to start before you get into maybe things that you're going to get, hung up on or not agree on. I try to be a straight shooter. I really try to outline, this is what I'm looking for. These are the principles by which I'm going to negotiate, and try to explain sort of at a high level what the objectives are for me and for us, so that then the other side can really help meet my needs. So I do try to negotiate from a collaborative perspective. And as I said earlier, this is about joint problem solving. So it's not about, this is what I want, this is what you want, let's see who's going to win, but rather, this is a we, and how do we actually get to what you want and what we want together? And I do think that I've been able to build my reputation for closing deals based on that. And frankly, most people in business tend to negotiate that way, especially if you do a lot of these sorts of things over time. For me personally, it's also important to build a personal relationship with the party that I'm negotiating with, both before and then throughout the negotiation. Whether it's just going out to dinner or building that relationship where you kind of know what's going on personally in the beginning of a negotiation before you get into the substance of it, and try to meet in person wherever possible, because, it makes a huge difference. Looking somebody in the eye and negotiating something, it's very hard not to be reasonable, right? It's very hard not to see the humanity in each other. And that can be very helpful and powerful. And I said before, it is important to have different styles and to flex this, right? That might be my normal mode of negotiating. But like I said, there are different situations and you just have to be able to adapt to it. there are situations where you don't want to share anything. You just want to keep it really cold and share as minimal information as possible. Put on your best poker face. Do not respond when they give you everything you wanted and then more. You might just come back and ask for more because that's what the situation might warrant. And you want to be a little aggressive on your asks. But there's a difference between being aggressive in your ask and being an aggressive person, right? You can get a lot without being a jerk. So I think of it as if you either want somebody to do something you can't do it yourself, which is most of life, or there's a decision that needs to be made together, there's the possibility of a negotiation. I'd say earlier in my career, compensation, when you're negotiating your comp for a new job, that's a pretty obvious area where negotiation skills can be helpful. So I'll give my example where about a long time ago, I received a new job and it was a pretty good first offer. You know, my title was a little bit higher than where I was before. There was some stock options and also a bonus associated with it. So I could have taken the offer as is, but because I'm also a business development professional and negotiate for a living, I was never going to accept that first offer, right? And so especially when you think about, especially as women or as people of color, oftentimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes people don't always ask for everything that they could get, frankly. And so I benchmarked my offer versus others in the industry by basically talking to my colleagues, asking them, you know, hey, for this sort of level, what do you think I should get? Sometimes you can get some research on it in the public domain, but typically not for, you know, entry-level positions. And Glassdoor, you know, things like that. Do your research. And at least from looking at it, what I cared about at that moment was I was saving up, my husband and I were saving up for a down payment for a new home. And so we wanted to make sure that the salary and the bonus was going to be a good package where I can start to save up some of it. But I actually decided to counter on everything. So I asked for a higher salary, a title increase, and more stock options. And in the end, I did get, you know, a higher salary, yay for me, and that then affects your bonus. But I did not get a title increase, but a handshake agreement that, you know, if you do a good job, maybe you'd be up for a promotion in a year. So kind of setting up for a future discussion. And then I also got more stock options. So in the end, I think I felt pretty good about the offer. And I'd say years later, what it really happened was that the stock options ended up being the most valuable from a financial perspective. And I actually, you know, ended up using some of the stock from that initial grant for our new home down payment. So I would say I learned that, you know, it certainly pays to negotiate. And if done well, your boss is going to respect you even more because, you know, if you do it in a way that's respectful, but that shows confidence and demonstrates that you've done your homework, those are really important skills in the job as well. So it kind of sets you up, you know, in a good situation as you go into the position. It does depend a bit on what leverage you have. So although I use my example of the salary for an early job, it was not my first job. For a first job, or if you're trying to get your foot in the door, you might not want to start by negotiating that first offer because you haven't proven yourself. You don't have anything to point to. Perhaps it'd be better either to negotiate a year after or some period after you have proven yourself and have essentially some leverage or some experience in that situation, or perhaps for your next job. So thinking about, again, what do you bring to the table? What do you have, you know, really at your disposal for good arguments? These are some of the things to consider before approaching a negotiation. But like I said, these are good skill sets. The kinds of things that you need to do in order to be a good negotiator are communication skills, obviously, but it's also really about strategy, right? If you think about it, you have to do your research and really understand what is it that I want. What are the arguments I have in my side, if you will? What do I know about this other person or the other side? What do they care about? What are we going to basically understand to be the same versus things where we're going to disagree on? And then thinking a little bit about the chess moves. So if I do this, then the other person's going to do that. So then how am I going to counter that? So thinking about things in a more strategic way is another skill set that's really important. And I think this idea of being able to frame your argument from the other person's perspective, meaning you can say the same thing, but you can say it in a way that makes the most sense for the other side because you already know what they might care about. So these are all just different skill sets that can be useful in life in lots of other ways too. Negotiations can be very emotional. It's actually very natural, especially for your first few times, right? It's natural to feel stressed or angry or embarrassed while you're going through this. So one thing to consider is if you feel like in the moment the emotions are driving your next move, it's very okay to say, you don't have to respond right now. Just instead of blurting out whatever happens or whatever comes to mind, you can just say, hey, let me think about that. Let me get back to you on this. Or can we just take a pause and let's schedule some more time to talk about this. So don't feel like you have to respond in the moment. And the last thing I'd say is to try to keep it light a little bit, right? Try to find a little humor while you're going through this. If you're having fun or at least pretending to have fun, then I think the negotiation will go a bit better. I want to share that there was a business school research study that was done where the researchers pretended to be an art dealer where they're selling a piece of art. And they had these, subjects come in who were the buyers. And they had one group where they negotiated back and forth. And then the art dealer would say, okay, my final price is X. And then in the second group, they did exactly the same thing, but they ended with my final price is X. And I'll throw in my pet frog. And guess what? That was the only difference. But the pet frog group, they actually paid more for the piece of art. They actually liked the negotiations better, and they even liked the art dealer better. So it kind of tells you a little bit of humor can go a long way. It's very powerful. Plus, you'll enjoy it more, even if you have to sacrifice your pet frog.
We hope you found this useful. For more videos in this series, please visit us at nationalmetals.org/inSTEM.